What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I am Christopher Beam with Tactical Advantage, and today we're going to talk about negative targets and how they can help you become a faster shooter.
This is not a paid endorsement, but I am a brand ambassador for Heckler and Koch USA. HK firearms are incredibly reliable, incredibly accurate, great firearms for defensive carry. From the new VP9A1 to the CC9 to the P30 that I have carried every day for the last 8 years, they are incredible firearms for defensive use. You carry a gun just in case. Shouldn't it be an HK just in case?
Okay, folks, so the other day I was in the ASP Dry Fire Challenge group, and another instructor actually posed a question with some data behind it on why some of her live fire work, especially draw to first shot, somewhat differed from her dry fire. And it sent me down a thought process, and I eventually had a suggestion for her. And the instructor's name was Susan, by the way, who's an accomplished instructor in her own right. So thank you for reaching out to me and seeking counsel. That was cool. But really what I landed on was discussing negative targets and why they are useful to us, especially if we're running into a ceiling with speed, and why they could actually help. So I figured with that conversation, it made sense to kind of share it. But first things first, the definition of a negative target is any target you choose to use where the acceptable target area is cut out to allow bullets to pass through. Interesting thought, right? So I've got this one just set up to kind of show you guys, but I want to explain why that's a thing and why a lot of times people struggle going from dry fire to live fire and those numbers matching up. I think a lot of time the conversation ends up being where we think that there's some fundamental difference in the action, which I don't believe that to be the case. I don't believe that to be the case with cold performance. I don't believe that to be the case with dry to live. What I do think is evidence, or what we see post-shot action, actually drives how we work. So with that said, I dug up a couple words here to kind of talk about at least the tendency or the definition of the tendency to actually have that slow down in live. And what I found was apophenia, where random events appear as patterns. This is a natural human tendency where we want to see patterns and or create patterns to make the world right. So basically the burgeoning beginning of OCD, but really all humans tend to do it to some extent. And as you couple that with the next term, it's called patterning instinct. And that's the general human drive to create patterns. And how I think that influences our shooting is, so say we're practicing just draw to first shot. And this also goes into actual grouping or multiple shot strings, but we'll just frame it as draw to first shot. So if this is our entire acceptable target area, when we're actually using paper for that, what people tend to do is they'll have a first impact, wherever that is, right? So that would be the first impact. And their natural tendency is to create their acceptable target area from all of this to this. So now their acceptable target area is basically the size of a 9mm projectile or 45 projectile, whatever they're shooting. And you can see it over and over and over again. And I see it all the time with students, where it's not necessarily using the target, they're using bullet impacts to dictate the pace of shooting. And what that does, it has an immediate effect on how long it takes you to stabilize the gun and send another shot. And that's something that happens a lot. If we frame it within multiple shot strings, if your splits are in the 40s or 50s, things like that, depending on your skill level, it could be even significantly more than that. What's happening more often than not is, even though we have all of this acceptable target area, we're trying to continue to put bullets in the same hole. That's what people do. It's not a negative aspect. It's not a technical flaw. It's just what people behaviorally try and run themselves to. So what I suggest when someone's in that is they just create a negative target. And the point of a negative target is if you actually have an acceptable shot, it's going to pass through, and you're not going to have that singular spot where you have the want or the urge to send another bullet into that same spot. A lot of times people can't do that anyway, but the want to it creates the drive, which basically just equates to time. So certainly helps with speed, and it's also equitable when someone's working on draw and we're just trying to work on the physical action of getting the gun out in front of you and sending a shot, where you'll hear instructors will have somebody shoot at the berm. Because the point is, in that particular instant, it's not accuracy, but actually the physical movement of the gun. And this is very similar to that, just at a little bit higher level and a little bit smaller target area where accuracy to an extent matters. But having holes appear really kind of changes the dynamic. The other end of the spectrum too is even if someone doesn't get the gun to settle on that one bullet impact, the drive for it will actually slow them down because they're confirming that shot versus relying on their sights to tell them if it was quality or not quality. So there's a huge time quotient there. So you can go back, I think John and Neil did a negative target video around 2021 or 2022 that I thought was really good, but I wanted to kind of explain why I think this matters and how you can overcome that natural tendency, especially if you're running into a performance ceiling. It's something that's removing a variable that helps you kind of push through. Now, again, I'm not saying that accuracy isn't a piece of this. It's just something that you don't want to hang up on when you're trying to work on speed, especially if you're seeing a pretty big variance in between your dry and live, or you're just hitting the wall, you can't get any faster. My money is on you have a visual reference that's causing you to either confirm or over confirm, and then you're using a target that is incredibly difficult. The last thing I'll say about this is why I think that matters and why it's pretty prevalent. Everybody, when they start shooting, the first reward, action reward system that they fall into is actually getting a bullet to hit where they want on target. So we're creating that dopamine response on getting a bullet exactly where we want. That's how we learn to shoot. Then it becomes, can I get two that are touching or two in the exact same place? We are creating that reward system. That reward system can be modified to do both speed and accuracy, not just accuracy. But you have to figure out a way to allow your psyche to create that paradigm within your mind, and negative targets are a great way to do that. So I know this one's kind of nerdy, but I don't like just telling people, well, do this and it solves your problem. Do this because, and it may solve your problem. So hopefully that helps, guys. I will see you next time. Try out a negative target. Let me know how it works out for you.